So far in the last 7 years, 11,000 units have been constructed. Is that really the evidence that should give them confidence that these other plans will work?
Vassy Kapelos goes one-on-one with Justin Trudeau's housing minister, Sean Fraser, and she does not let anything slide with him. She just keeps ripping the guy over and over. And Sean Fraser's one of those kind of guys, he looks like he's a smart, well-educated guy, but really he's just an idiot. But if you watch the guy, he thinks he's smart. He thinks he knows what's going on, but he really doesn't know anything. He really doesn't.
Would you have made the full suite of announcements that you've made as of today if there weren't a political imperative to do so? And by that, I mean if the Conservatives' focus on housing hadn't come at your party's immense expense in the polls?
Well, let's not pretend that the only folks talking about housing were elected folks in the House of Commons. When I was home last summer and in the months leading up to it, this is what people were talking about. I'm one of the younger cabinet ministers in Canada, and everybody my age and younger, when I'm at home, is talking about the housing pressures that they're facing. We're taking our lead not from other political parties, but from Canadians who have housing needs that need to be met. And we believe that the plan that we put forward today sets the stage to solve the housing crisis and meet the needs of the people who've been telling us that they need help.
And I have some questions about the specifics of that plan, but is it your contention essentially that it's this summer when you spoke to some of your constituents and younger Canadians that you decided the crisis what necessitated your government kind of meeting the moment? Because I would kind of contend counter to that if you look at some of the housing prices and the jump in them from 2015 to 2021, a 97% increase. It was 811,000 on average across this country by the end of 2021, that issue existed for those young Canadians, particularly in markets like Toronto and Vancouver, well before your government started to try and meet that moment.
Well, we started down the path of doing things a little bit differently on housing when we launched the National Housing Strategy in 2017. Granted, the focus was disproportionately on affordable housing for low-income families. What we saw in the later portion of the pandemic, and certainly coming out of it, as people bought up the housing stock that existed when interest rates were very low and inflation was starting to take hold, we did see things were getting more and more challenging. In fact, the Housing Accelerator Fund, which I may have rolled out, was in a budget that preceded my time in this office a few years ago. So we had been doing more and more and more. But from my perspective, when I came into this position in the summer, the unique focus on housing, not just in my own community, but right across Canada, was something that I was hearing loud and clear. So we got to work to put together measures that we thought would make a meaningful difference, which culminated in the plan that we've put forward today.
He loves to take credit for things that he didn't do. He always, I put that in there. The immigration thing, I put that in there. You know, Mark Miller came in and he took that over. Like that recent example he did, he's doing it now. Oh yeah, I put that in a long time ago. Yet wasn't it just last year he was talking to his constituents like, oh yeah, things are kind of expensive, man. Can you maybe fix that? You're the housing minister. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll just do that. Yeah. The guy's such an idiot. We know what's up. It stinks. Ottawa stinks. We can smell it across the country. It's corrupt. It just reeks. It reeks of corruption. Everything this guy's doing is doing nothing. The Liberals love to just buy up a lot of consultants and bureaucrats, bloat out the government. It's like they're almost intentionally trying to run this into the ground.
I think, though, about the nature of the crisis. For example, around rents, a lot of that is part of what you're announcing in this go-round. I mean, the CMHC was saying back in October of 2023 that the vacancy rate at 1.5% was down from 1.9% a full year earlier in 2022, which at the time had been the lowest vacancy rate in 2 decades. And the reason I ask about what the impetus or the imperative for your government to actually meet this moment, what it is about, and if it's political in nature, is because I think a lot of Canadians will be listening to this with great interest, hoping that your government will solve the very real problems that they're up against. And my question is, should they, given your track record?
We're not asking for anybody to believe in a promise. We're asking them to believe in a plan. We're showing our work. You know, you learned that in a grade 8 math class. You only get full credit if you show you how you got to the answer. Today, we are putting forward a full and comprehensive set of policies that we believe is actually going to solve the housing crisis. It's going to help build more homes at a pace we've never built before. There's measures to directly help people that will make it easier to find a place to rent and to buy a home. And there's measures that are going to continue supporting people people who can't afford a place to live. I hope people take a read of the plan that we put forward today, and more importantly, that they benefit from the policies that we implement going forward.
But on those policies, for example, the one that offers low-cost loans in order to incentivize the building of new apartment units, that's an expansion, a top-up of a program that was first introduced in the housing policy you named back in 2017. So far, in the last 7 years, 11,000 units have been constructed and $18 billion loaned out. Is that, if people are to look at your work or show your work, is that really the evidence that should give them confidence that these other plans will work?
So you're talking about the apartment construction loan program, and keep in mind that it's common for the buildings that benefit from that program to take about 3.5 years to complete construction, because they have hundreds of units and are dozens of stories tall in most instances. That program has 11,000 units that have keys and doors, 32,000 units that have shovels in the ground, and 45,000 or so units with funding committed. That program's actually scheduled to deliver, on schedule, 131,000 units through low-cost financing, which is money that gets paid back to the government. It's actually become a primary source of lending in the market for apartment construction in this country. So despite the fact that there's 11,000 units today, that's actually a reflection of the fact of how long it takes to build these buildings after the program was first introduced. That program's operating on schedule and is going to become a major tool when it comes to apartment construction right across Canada, as it has over the past couple of years.
This guy absolutely loves, they go to a building that's been in construction for more than 8 years, or including the planning process and all that, obviously back in Harper's time, and then they like to stand there when it's just being completed, like, oh, look what we did, look what we did. We built this building, housing accelerator. They're not going to solve the problem like this. They won't. How can you just throw more money at a situation when we don't have enough builders to build the houses? You need technology and to cut out the immigration to solve this problem, period. Period. That's why I keep talking about doing tiny houses. We need machines to build tiny houses. That's how to fix this problem. On top of things, the CMHC numbers, they predict 3.9 million houses by 2030. Those numbers are so out of whack. We're already, there's reports out that we're like minus 4.4, minus 5 million right now. We're going to need 10 million in 5 years, in 10 years. You can't be bringing 1.2 million people a year and having majority of those people stick around and think we're only going to need 3 million houses in 5 years. It's ridiculous. Or 4 million, or whatever the number is.
Do you contend over the past couple of years it is? Because again, I think for the average person, if they hear even 40,000 in 7 years, I mean, you're looking at a gap of 3.5 million additional units by 2030, according to the CMHC. We're talking in the tens of thousands.
Well, that's one specific program. That program is going to be responsible for about 130,000 units over the next number of years. The Housing Accelerator Fund is leading to hundreds of thousands of new permits that are being issued. The GST cut and the Canada Mortgage Bond program combined for hundreds of thousands of units more. Each of the policies that we're putting in place would never solve the housing crisis as a standalone policy. But when you look at the comprehensive suite of policies that are designed to do all of the things that we're trying to achieve, the sum total will allow us to solve the housing crisis. So the work that we're putting in isn't suggesting that any one policy is a silver bullet. It's part of a broader plan that's going to help us get where we need to be.
Can we unpack some of the targets that you mentioned there in your pledge that this will restore affordability? I think what the plan says is 3.87 million new homes by 2031, a minimum of 2 million of those on top of the CMHC's forecast of 1.87 million being built anyway. So 2 million above and beyond what's already being built is short of what the CMHC has projected is necessary. Plus, in that 2 million, your government would be responsible for 1.2 million and the provinces for another 800,000. And not all the provinces are on the same page as you right now. They're accusing you, for example, of overreach. How can you tell Canadians that what you're promising, the totality of it in the aggregate, will actually happen?
First of all, there's a few different estimates that demonstrate what the supply gap in Canada ought to be. The Parliamentary Budget Officer recently suggested we need to get to about 3.1. The Smart Prosperity Institute is another organization that produced an assessment of the supply gap at about 3.5 million. We believe we can meet and exceed both of those targets. The CMHC supply gap you mentioned too talks about restoring a level of affordability that existed about 20 years ago just through supply measures. We think we can get between the Parliamentary Parliamentary Budget Officer's estimates, the Smart Prosperity Institutes, and CMHC's, but we also are relying on other measures to restore affordability. But you make an excellent point. No level of government can do this on their own. And despite there may be disagreement here or there on a given issue, I actually sincerely believe provinces and territories and cities want to be a part of this solution. But we're not just asking provinces to step up. We're putting federal incentives on the table, backed by billions of dollars, for those most ambitious provinces who implement the reforms that we know will work. If certain provinces choose not to, we'll find a way to deploy those resources to support the most ambitious cities. It's going to take work. There may be disagreements by times, but that's the nature of evolving policies in a federation. But we believe we can get there so long as provinces and territories meet the ambitious level of home building that we demonstrated we want to achieve today.
How does the math even work, man? Even if you can't throw money at a problem when you literally have to build houses. There's only 240,000 houses per year that get built across Canada. So how do you double the number when you're not doubling the builders? Are you guys going to some other country that has the same building codes? Are you going to England or America and bringing in those builders to build houses? Like, they don't talk about this ever. This is basic math. As he said, grade 4 or whatever he said earlier on. You can't just throw money at something and expect the houses to appear unless it's technology. You got a robot building tiny houses and then you plop them down on a concrete foundation. You call it a day. That is the only way that this is going to work. Whether it's 3D printed concrete houses or some sort of other 3D robot thing that puts together tiny houses, or using a shipping container as a base, and then you have to insulate that and cut out the holes for the windows, and then you build extra stuff, whatever it may be. You can't just say, here's $10 billion, there's a bunch of houses. That doesn't work that way. Who's building these? Now sure, putting the incentives there will allow more builders to come into the picture, and oh, okay, there's some money there, let's get to building more houses. It's just crazy.
Drill down on that, because some of the incentives, for example, that you put on the table are not simply incentives. They're tied very much to a specific list of requirements. In the case of Alberta, they've tabled legislation in order to kind of block your government from going around them directly to municipalities, saying that if the municipalities are going to make agreements with your government, they're actually going to have to get approval from the province ahead of time. They've modeled that on Quebec's legislation. So my question to you, Minister, is why your government has expressed a criticism of what Alberta's doing, and you seem fine with what Quebec's doing.
So in the case of Quebec, the most recent example is the Housing Accelerator Fund. That was actually an opportunity for us to reach an agreement that achieved a more ambitious level of investment, because Quebec actually stepped up and matched our investment. We put $900 million on the table. Quebec doubled that and implemented a series of reforms that were going to make it easier to build homes. It may be the jurisdiction where we got the greatest return on investment. If we look at the other example that you mentioned in Alberta, we've put money on the table that resulted in precisely Alberta's population-based share in communities right across the province to accelerate the pace of home building, and we didn't see the provincial government match us. If they wanted to reach out and say we should have a province-by-province bargain, and we're going to match you and put measures in place that will accelerate home building, I'll take that call 7 days a week.
Right, but respectfully, Minister, the investments that you made in Quebec were not predicated necessarily on Quebec agreeing to every single reform. They still have that legislation in place. Why is it different for Alberta than in Quebec? Because they certainly view it that way.
Yeah, Alberta's like at a deficit of like $2 billion of what they should have. And considering they do those make-up payments for the rest of Canada, like, they should be getting at least their fair share, if not more, back, because they're the one who pays the most taxes in this country.
Look, they view it that way, and I have a different view of the situation. If Alberta, and I have a good relationship with my ministerial counterparts in both Quebec and Alberta. I've spoken with them both a number of times, and both fairly recently. If Alberta wants to come forward and say, we're going to match your investment, and we're going to implement reforms that make it easier to build homes, we'll have those conversations with a goal of reaching a deal in good faith. I've not yet seen that that's something that they're interested in doing, but if they are, I'm here and ready to take the call.
So yeah, first off, CTV, don't do this. Put these in the bottom corners, and this is not even properly off to the side, but Sean Fraser, man, it's all political. Obviously, Justin Trudeau hates Alberta, and he's, it goes through the whole thing, obviously Guilbeault and Daniel Smith, that battle's been going on. They're not going to give their fair share to Alberta, but it's just really the money should just be divvied out per capita per province and done. Why is there Obviously, we know why. It's political. It's all political. So what should really be happening here? Let's break this down. I was out for a run today and thinking, how can we actually get the housing crisis solved? Because you can't just, I've been a big proponent of they should be building tiny houses and making tiny plots for people to live, places people can park their car. They should have the van life plots, make all sorts of other options available to people so they can get off of the streets, get out of the tents. People who have RVs and they're just at rest stops, like give them a place to have some humanity and put some bathrooms in and like just do something. And I was thinking, what is the best way for them to solve this? And it just came to me. It's basically mixing the War Measures Act, the War Measures housing thing they did with the Sears houses back in the wartime. Basically, Sears had all these cookie cutter houses. They were like predefined styles and houses, and Sears would cut all the wood and the blocks or whatever and have like a big block of wood, like an IKEA house you put together yourself. And they would just, you buy it and ship it over. So we look at them here. You've got, so like this is an ad for it. And then you would get this predefined house, $1,500. You'd go through a catalog and you'd just pick out your house like this and they'd send you all the wood. See, is IKEA, build your own. And I think, so a bunch of these houses still stand today. They're great houses, great designs. The only way to get to the numbers we need to, because they're not addressing the big elephant in the room, which is we don't have enough builders to double. You can't, say if every builder ramps up their production to the maximum amount. Say they all double production, those 240,000 houses becomes 500,000 a year. Even after 5 years, that's 2.5 million houses. That's not going to get to that 4 million or whatever target it is. Realistically, we're at a deficit. Got an article here, like 4.4 million. So a new report shows Canada's missing 4.4 million houses. And, CMHC numbers, it basically, a lot of these articles say that their reports are way off, like they're way under. The figures show a current deficit of 3 million houses for low and very low income households. And there also needs to be, 1.4 million missing houses for moderate and medium home. So like 4.4, and you add on that, every year, because we're already maxed out, if they're bringing in 1.2 million people per year, and a bunch of those people want to stay, like, what is it, 1 million? Like, we should probably budget for 1 million every year. So for 5 years, we need 5 million. Say if it's only half, it's 2.5 million plus 4.4, that's 6 point, Like 7 million houses, 6.9, like the numbers don't add up. How do you get, so if all the builders stack up their production, they double it to, up to 500,000. They're doubling from 240,000 houses per year that currently get built, double that to 500,000. We're still 2.5 million of the 7 million or whatever numbers you want to use. That's still a huge deficit of 4.5 million houses. The only way to solve this, I think, taking these wartime houses, these Sears catalog houses, and get people to make them themselves. But you can't expect people to be building a big house by themselves, but people can build a tiny house by themselves, put it in their backyard. You buy a package, it costs 10 grand or whatever, 15 grand for all the lumber and wood and all that. And you get a foundation put, you get the foundation inspected, you get rid of all this bureaucracy of building houses. If it's a foundation, you can put the house on it. Done. You get that inspected, done. There's no thousands of dollars. Oh, can we put this here? The wind flow, there's a crow up there. Maybe he doesn't like the house there. Like none of this nonsense that we got going on in Canada. And then you get out there and you build your tiny house in the backyard. That way we will quadruple the amount of builders in Canada. We got people, say someone who doesn't have a job, and they're living in their parents' basement. Oh, okay, little Johnny, get out there, build that tiny house so we can rent that out. You got people, retired. They're just, they're still in their 50s or 60s. And, oh yeah, maybe I'll go out there and build a tiny house. Then I can rent that out. Like the numbers would quadruple. They would go up so much if people could build their own house and little tiny house and rent it out for $1,000, $2,000 a month. The rents would come down. People would still get income coming in. Even if they're not making astronomical rents after a whole bunch of people do it, it still would be an income property in your backyard, and have them like really small ones. People, if you look in New York, people are living in like nothing, like 300 or 400 square feet. So like make some tiny houses that are 500 or 600 square feet. And then you can have the 1,000 square foot ones as well, but like have some different ones. So people have different options to build. Yeah. So someone sent this here to me. It was just perfect timing because this is like quite literally in the same realm of what I was just thinking. So let's just check this out.
One local group is trying to put a dent in the housing crisis, one tiny home at a time. They plan to build laneway homes, or tiny homes, to help people who are on the verge of becoming homeless. Their very first project is almost complete and move-in ready. Sean Cowan has more from the city's north end.
Putting the finishing touches on this home.
I think it's just an amazing feeling to see something that was an idea and then for it to become a house that someone gets to move into.
This secondary dwelling or tiny home is built in the backyard of this house on John Street North in Hamilton's North End. Everything was done legally with permits from the city, which allows these types of units to be built. The charity behind the project is called IMBY, short for In My Backyard.
We just recognize right now with the cost of living that there are a lot of people that are vulnerable to becoming houseless. So our goal with IMBY is to be a preventative organization and prevent people from becoming homeless.
While the charity started 4 years ago, this home is their first project. All the materials are purchased, but the actual construction is all donated time by professionals and volunteers.
So this particular build is 12 feet wide by 40 feet long with 12-foot ceilings. It has 430 square feet approximately, 1 bedroom, full kitchen, full bathroom, laundry, living room space.
The goal with these tiny homes is to keep construction costs at about $150,000. That way the homeowners can carry it while charging an affordable rent.
Our goal with IMBY is to make sure that rent is no more than 30% of somebody's income, which is provincial standards for affordable rent.
Rent on this one will be $1,000 per month. They've already found a tenant through a food bank, and she moves in May 1st. And while this is their first project, they already have 3 more backyards lined up and ready to go. In Hamilton, Sean Cowan, CHCH News.
So yeah, I mean, that looks nice. 150 grand is kind of pricey, but I mean, I guess that's what the going rates are. Really, if you're paying someone, you want to think maybe we can get one of these built for 100 grand or something. I mean, it looks good though. Like, go support these people if you're out there. This is what we need to see more of, and this is perfectly fine for someone to live in. In this small town that I live in, when I first moved here, the rents were about $700 a month for like this place I'm in right now. This has 2 bedrooms. I guess this could be technically 3 bedrooms, 1 bath for an entire house. So I know the rates have gone crazy. It's, you know, $1,000 for this little place, but that's where we are today. Realistically, it'd be nice to see a place like this rent for $400 a month. Everyone's got them in their backyards, and then that's how you get the, you know, this is a great place for like a student to live. That's how it should be. But as of right now, you know, I think anyone is just, you know, chomping at the bit for the chance to have somewhere to live where it's not super crazy $2,000 a month. Now just think, if we had a robot that built all the pieces for this, it was a pre-approved plan. All you had to do was put in a concrete foundation or some whatever, some pilings or whatever those are, and you got all the pieces, and it shows up in a delivery truck, boom, right on the side of the house there, and you just start putting them together. And the robot, you know, it it puts little things on the 2x4s or whatever, so you know where all the pieces go. It marks them off. The robot cuts all the wood, puts it in there, puts it in the box. Off you go. This is what the Canadian government should be focusing all these billions on, is setting up a robot facility like Tesla. Have you ever seen, let's just look at it right now. This is their Berlin facility, but you can basically see if we had a house building system that was like all these machines, and it just went in and it just cut all the boards. It wouldn't even have to be this sophisticated, but it went and cut all the boards and all the pieces for a house, and it just chop them up and put them into a stack. You wouldn't need any people to do any of that work. You just basically have people working on the machinery and setting this up. And I'm sure if you spent $16 billion, you would have that facility built for you. You would be able to, you would find people to do it for $16 billion or however much money they're spending, you know, $11 billion here, $5 billion there on what they're spending on these housing accelerators. Like, why not just build a factory that builds the houses? Yeah, so according to Google here, I'm just looking off screen, basically to build a gigafactory for Tesla costs $1.5 billion. So could they not just spend $5 billion to build a house factory with the R&D and then the whole production of building all the robots, and then just have it, you know, do this and crank out tiny houses, and then you just start sending them people's houses and people can start building them in their backyards. We would turn, you know, 1 million, 2 million people into home builders in their backyard and solve this problem in a couple of years. What they're doing now will not solve the problem. They know it. We all know it. Also, side note, whoever the FPV drone pilot doing this is, they're crushing it. This is an excellent, well done. Essentially, if you look at a house, it's a whole bunch of boards cut to specific lengths. And then you need maybe some specific pieces, right? So if you look at this, like this tiny house here, built out of metal, this one built out of wood. On top of it too, you'd already have these pieces that are already made. Like you just go get these at Home Depot, right? They would just bulk order these. They put this with the tiny house, flat pack it into a thing and deliver it on a truck. And then you just start putting this together, all the shingles, all the stuff. A, B, screw them in. You know, it takes you 2 months, 3 months, 5 months. Heck, it even takes someone a year to build one of these things. You would increase the housing supply dramatically in Canada. You have the government go and set a bunch of designs like this. This looks nice. You had that other blue one. Make 10 designs. People can pick their design. They buy it for 20 grand off of the government website. Have the government produce these at cost, so it doesn't cost us any extra money, right? It makes money, get it so it's neutral, it's not making a profit, it's run by the government, and then have these shipped to people's houses at cost, and working with the timber industry, because a lot of crown land, especially out here on Vancouver Island, you could just be able to open it up like, okay, we get that timber super cheap because it's crown land and there's no taxes or whatever being paid on it. Send it to the facility, cut up the pieces, flat pack it, send it to people's houses, build it. For a couple $1 billion, we sure can figure this out. Have 15 designs. This shouldn't be something that's so complicated. These are not that complicated. We don't need a Tesla robot factory that complicated. It needs to be pretty basic. And something else to think about too with the housing situation is, because of the conflict that's going on in with Iran and Israel, I mean, let's just look at the stock market here. So this is the stock market today, and you can see the TSX taking a plummet here, 5 days. So you can see here, the key question here is, how far is this going to fall? Because people aren't going to be, if they're losing their shirt here and losing their pants with the stock market going down that much, they're not going to, like, a lot of people will just ride it out. Some people maybe dump their stocks right away, but a lot of people are going to ride it out. So they're not going to sell their stocks and want to buy or build new houses. This is further going to affect the market. A few things to think about there, but let me know in the comments down below what you guys are thinking about this tiny house idea I have. I think this is a solution to get us back on track. And everything that bonehead Sean Fraser is suggesting there, it's just like, it's all fluff. Oh yeah, we're throwing a bunch of money. Yeah, that'll take care of the problem. No, you need people to actually build houses, Sean Fraser. Then again, he's the failed immigration minister, so what do you expect? He doesn't know anything about either of these topics. And he takes his advice from his buddies back home that a year ago, hey man, it's kind of expensive. Can you? Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave this episode. Thanks for stopping by and watching. I greatly appreciate all of you. We're up to 50 members now on the member, whatever it's called on YouTube. Shelf thing there, channel members. So I greatly appreciate everyone joining there. I'm shocked that it's always going up like that. For the majority of my big channel that I had, actually I have it right there. You can see my my play button there. I brought it over. That's all the only remnants I have of my channel with 250,000 subscribers that got deleted. That's literally all I've got left is that thing. I never had channel members on that because I was before that time, and so it's just it's still a little new to me. Either way, I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by here. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications. We'll keep fighting for freedom, and I'll see you guys in the next one.